Can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
This video is sponsored by sharpbetting.co.uk, the home of betting tips and analysis. Please click the link in the description to find out more.
The ESBR Boxing YouTube channel. This is the big fight breakdown for the huge fight happening in the light middleweight division on February 22nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, on the undercard of Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol too. I am pleased as always to be joined by Ra Hookham and Thomas Cathy. Great to have you on, guys. As I mentioned, big fight breakdown. Vergil Ortiz Jr., Israel Madrimov, a cracking fight. I'm really looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this video and dissecting this fight with the two of you. So thanks for joining me. Got a couple of talking points that we'd like to run through, and we will give our predictions at the end of the video as well. So please do hang around for that. But first and foremost, go to you first, Thomas. Looking at their last fights, their respective last fights, Madrimov obviously beaten by Terence Crawford, Vergil Ortiz beat Boachuk, but was on the canvas once or twice, I believe. Who do you think will have learned more from their last fight?
Man, it's a really good question. But experience, 12, the experience of going 12 with a guy who's considered the best pound for pound fighter in the world, or, depending on who's fighting currently at the moment, maybe he's number 2 right now. But 12 rounds with someone like Terence Crawford, I feel like that experience is pretty invaluable, especially since he gave Crawford so much. Not that he necessarily hurt him, or not that there's any controversy on the scorecards or anything like that, but he did make it a close fight, and he did make Crawford think throughout, and Crawford definitely didn't look as well in that fight. So I think 12 rounds against the best pound for pound fighter is probably the better feat in my opinion, but also like getting up off the deck the way Vergil did was very impressive as well. And especially that was the first time we'd seen him, if I'm correct, go the distance against go the distance at all. And he was in a tough fight against somebody in Boachuk, who wasn't going to lay down, and was dishing back. So I think he learned a lot about himself there. But in this case, I would have to give the edge to Madrimov.
Yeah, interesting. Some great points there, Thomas. I suppose you can kind of look at it in two ways. The first time Vergil Ortiz went the full distance, so he'll have learned a lot from that. He's still only 26. But obviously he's the one that's had 10 more fights than Madrimov. Madrimov obviously more of an extensive amateur career, turned over a bit later. He's had just the 12. So to fight Terence Crawford in your 12th fight, and to go the distance with him, yeah, I agree. I think it's a quite a feat. Even though obviously he will have been confident he was going to win that fight. He didn't go in there to lie down, so to speak. Ra, what do you think? Do you agree with Thomas, or have you got a slightly different take on it?
Slightly different take. I agree with him in the sense that I think being in with such a high ring IQ fighter like Crawford, as Thomas said, probably the best pound for pound fighter in the world. I think Madrimov would have learnt overall more. However, in the context of what they've learnt for their next fight, it could be that Vergil's learnt more that's going to be useful for him for this fight, in the sense that, Boachuk also being from, that Soviet amateur background, he's more likely to be stylistically closer to what Madrimov brings than what Ortiz is to Crawford. I mean, Crawford and Ortiz don't fight anything alike, whereas I can imagine Boachuk and Madrimov are somewhat similar, because that sort of former Soviet sort of amateur style is pretty much like just a conveyor belt. But don't they all fight essentially the same way? So it could well be that Ortiz has learned more what's going to be of use for this next fight. But overall, Madrimov probably has learnt a hell of a lot more that he'll be able to take forward for the rest of his career in going up against someone as difficult as Bard. Someone who will have got him thinking more than probably anyone else he's ever been in the ring with, and probably will ever get in the ring with.
Yeah, for sure. I think both men, whether or not you agree whether Madrimov's learned more or Ortiz learned more, both have learned a hell of a lot. I think that's probably fair to say. You know, it's I suppose, how does Madrimov react being beaten for the first time? How does Vergil Ortiz react? Well, obviously that was the first time that he didn't win via stoppage. It's the first time he was on the deck himself. It's a close fight. He won via majority decision. So yeah, fair. Maybe past a few gut checks in that fight as well in that sense. So yeah, it's an interesting one depending on what way you look at it. But I think both of you have made fairly good points there. I think this next question might sound silly when you actually look at their stoppage ratio and the percentage of fights that they've won via knockout. But going back to you, Rad, do you believe that either man can win this fight via knockout? Ortiz is 21 stoppages in his 22 victories. Madrimov 7 stoppages in his 10. But the reason I asked that is because they both went the distance in their last fight, which was a kind of that step up to the real world level, so to speak. So can you see a world in which either man wins this via knockout, or do you believe that this fight could be destined for the full 36 minutes?
I mean, at this level, the guys, they've got the punching power to knock each other out. But then at this level, they've demonstrated tremendous punch resistance, and more importantly, the skill level to not get caught by one of those sort of, really big shots that will take them out. It's possible, but I think an inside the distance win for either is unlikely. An actual knockout, I think, is very slim. I think if someone was to get stopped, it's more likely be through accumulation.
It's interesting. That's the reason I kind of asked the question, I suppose. I mean, because on the surface, if you do just take a glance at the resumes, you maybe do think that the way that this fight goes is going to be via stoppage one way or another for either man. But I agree with what you're saying there. I think at this level, yeah, I mean, at this level, it just looks. Yes, the whole cliche, one punch can change a fight. It only takes one shot. Blah blah blah. But at this level, at the very top level, that world level, best in the division, a lot of them often do cancel each other out. So I can completely understand where you're coming from there. And I think I do agree. If I was to have to put money on whether this fight was to go the distance or not, I probably would back it to go the distance at this stage. But that could change. My mind could change closer to the fight. Thomas, what do you think? Do you think this fight could be a fight that either man wins via knockout, or do you see this going the full 12 rounds as well?
No, I'd have to agree with Raw. I think that in almost all certainty, it will probably go the distance. I know that both guys can punch and are a knockout threat, but I think just given the skill level of both guys, the technical ability of both, um, I think they're going to go in there, and it's probably going to be. I think we're going to see Vergil in more of a chess match than perhaps we're used to seeing him in. And yeah, both guys also, like Rob mentioned, can have shown that they can take a punch as well. So yeah, I see this going the full 12, 100%.
Yeah, I think we're all in unison there in our belief that this goes the full 36 minutes. That's not saying that neither man has the power or possesses the that punch to end the fight at any moment. They can, of course. This is boxing, as I said. Anything that can happen. But I would agree with both of your sentiments there. I do believe that it's fairly likely that this fight does go the distance. Right. I'm gonna do something a bit different. I don't know your predictions yet, folks. But seeing as there's the three of us on the call and there's the two of yous here, I'm gonna ask you and put you on the spot and ask you to make a case for each fighter. So randomly, Ra, if you are in Vergil Ortiz Jr.'s corner, what are your tactics to him? How do you think he wins his fight? And then I'll come to you, Thomas. If you're in Madrimov's corner, how do you think he wins his fight? What are his keys to victory? If you want to go ahead first, Ra.
Vergil Ortiz, I think he's tremendous body punching. If he can stop that rhythm that these Eastern Bloc fighters like to get into with the constant pressure. But as he's learned against Bohachuk at this level, and these Kazakh or Uzbek guys, they often come up with that tremendous physical traits, i.e., the great punch resistance and the grit that he's obviously not experienced much, especially when fighting those guys where he's got his 20 plus knockouts against. So again, I think as Thomas said, it's likely to be a chess match. Yeah, I think that the body punching to try and disrupt the rhythm and slow down Madrimov's work, that might be the key. Easier said than done, of course, because I'm sure Madrimov is well aware that a Mexican pressure fighter is going to be bringing a lot of body punching, especially now as these Eastern Bloc fighters do base themselves in America. So I'm sure he will have had plenty of experience in sparring with those sort of guys.
Yeah, for sure. Thomas, what about you? What are you saying to Israel Madrimov? If you're Madrimov, how do you figure out the puzzle that is Vergil Ortiz?
I would, if I were Madrimov, I would focus on slowing the fight down, not quite letting it be a phone booth battle like Virgil's fight with Bochuk was, and allowing Virgil to get inside and really just tear you up. I would, try to slow it down, make it more like the Terrence Crawford fight. Um, Give himself a chance to pick off Ortiz at a distance. And I feel like personally that Ortiz would benefit from, he would have the edge in a faster paced phone booth type fight. So I think if you're Madrimov, you want to use your deep amateur background and your boxing skills and pedigree as much as you can in this one, and just stay on the outside and box your way to victory.
For sure. It's come to that time of the video. We could probably talk at length about this fight. It's a really, really intriguing one. I imagine the boxing fans will be fairly split on it. You can definitely make a case for both men for sure, as you did so well there. But it's time to come for our predictions. I know we're maybe a little bit further out than the fight. We're recording this maybe a couple of weeks earlier than the actual fight. Our minds can change as well. Depending on, I don't know, sometimes obviously depending on how they look on the scales the day before can be a telling factor if someone's really had a tough cut and all. But we will come to our predictions. So throwing it right back to you, Thomas. How do you see this fight playing out? Israel Madrimov, Vergil Ortiz Jr., Feb 22nd in Saudi. How does it go?
Boy, I definitely think this will be the toughest of Virgil's career, but I see him getting it done via close decision. Very, very razor thin. Maybe a little bit of controversy. I think that it will be uh, probably a chess match. I think that Madrimov will succeed in slowing Virgil down a little bit, and I think that Virgil will have a bit more, perhaps a bit more respect for Madrimov than some of his previous opponents. Um, but yeah, I see it being a tough fight for both guys, but at the end of the day, I think that the physical ability of Virgil and just his aggressiveness will edge the fight out for him. So I got Virgil Ortiz winning. I'll say split decision.
Oh, we love when you call a split or a majority or a draw or whatever. Ra, what about you? Are you agreeing with Thomas or are you going the other way? Are you going with Madrimov?
Very much I'm agreeing with him in terms of his analysis of the fight, yeah. But I am going the other way. And the reason is, in seeming contradiction to what I said earlier about, I think Vergil might have learned more for this particular fight. However, I think maybe what Madrimov has learned from the Bud fight is how at the very highest level, the need to be able to adjust constantly on the fly. And I think he will adjust enough times round by round to just nick a very close decision, split or majority. Of course, Vergil's team De La Hoya and co will go away saying they were robbed. It won't have been a robbery. It would have been a razor close fight that either could have won. If the fight was happening in America, I'd say the judges would give it to Ortiz, maybe for more of his aggression and pressure. But it being an international destination, I think, that might favour Madrimov, and his slightly better boxing will get him a very close decision.
Interesting. So you're leaving me with the cast and vote, it seems. It's a tough one. I do, for the record, think it's really, really close and can see it being a close decision. However, I'm a big fan of Madrimov. I really rate him. I think, would I go as far as saying I would actually be surprised if Madrimov didn't win. I do believe, I'm fairly confident Madrimov gets this done. In saying that, Vergil Ortiz Jr. is a great fighter. He showed that he's not just a big puncher. Obviously, with that Bojack fight, showed he's got balls as well. Yes, he wasn't massively hurt, but he did have to get off the canvas and all of those attributes that he does have. But I just think Madrimov, like, he was in with a truly special fighter against Terence Crawford. He certainly won rounds. It was a close fight. It was a tough night's work for Bud Crawford. I think he'll have learned a lot from it, as we've talked about throughout this video. But yeah, I'm going Madrimov. I'm going points as well, but maybe a little wider than you said, Ra. But equally, Thomas, I can see why you've gone for Ortiz, and I do think it'll be relatively close. I don't think it'll be a landslide, put it that way. I think Ortiz will win rounds. But for me, I do think we'll have a fairly, I think we'll have a conclusive win for Madrimov. I don't think there'll be any doubt about it, in my opinion. Guys, appreciate your time as always. Really enjoyed talking about that fight with you guys. If you're watching this video, please do hit subscribe button, hit that like button. Also, let us know in the comments what you think of this fight, who you're favouring, why, who learned more in their last fights, and just kind of your general thoughts on the fight as a whole. Ra, Thomas, it's been a pleasure, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you.